This video is going to cover solving quadratics by factoring. If you need a review on how to factor, you need to go back and find the video that we did on factoring a while back and work on that. This video is simply going to do some factoring, some really basic factoring, and very quickly, and then we're going to show you how to solve the quadratic after you factor it. So our first one that we're going to work, and there's only going to be two examples, is 6x squared plus 14x, and that's going to equal 0. So just like all of the other quadratic solving that we've done so far, it needs to equal 0. So that's the first thing you check. Does it equal 0? And if it doesn't, you got to subtract and get everything over on the same side so that it does equal 0. Ours are conveniently always equaling 0. And then what you need to do is you have to decide what kind of factoring you're going to do. So the first thing you need to do is you need to look at it and go, is this a trinomial? And remember, a trinomial means it has 3 terms. So this is a term and this is a term. A trinomial would mean, hey, it's got 3. This one only has 2, so no, this is not a trinomial. So if the answer is no, if you have a binomial like this one, then you need to just factor the GCF. So just factor the greatest common factor. So we're going to look at these two pieces and we're going to factor out the biggest thing that they have in common. So I have 6x squared plus 14x. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to go, oh, they both have an x in common. This x has the smallest exponent, so I'm going to factor that out. These are both even numbers, so I'm going to factor out a 2. And I'm going to go ahead and factor out 2x all at once just to save myself a little bit of writing. 6x squared divided by 2x is 3x, and 14x divided by 2 is 7. There is no prime number that goes into 3 and 7. There are no factors that go into 3 and 7 at the same time. So this is our greatest common factor. And so this is when we would normally rewrite the problem. 2x times 3x plus 7 equals 0. So that's what our factored problem looks like. So to solve this, we're going to take the two pieces. We're going to take the 2x and the 3x plus 7, and we're going to separate them out. We're going to take 2x, and we're going to take 3x plus 7. And since the whole problem equals 0, we're going to say 2x equals 0, and 3x plus 7 equals 0. And then we're just going to solve those two equations. So we're going to divide by 2, and we're going to find that in the first one, x equals 0. And in the second one, we're going to subtract 7 from both sides, so we get 3x equals negative 7. And then we're going to divide by 3, and we're going to get that x equals negative 7/3. And I'm going to leave it as an improper fraction. I'm not going to turn it into a decimal because that would make a repeating decimal. I'm not going to turn it into a mixed number. I'm just going to leave it as an improper fraction. And then I'm going to put it in brackets, least to greatest. So negative 7/3 is the smallest number. 0 is the bigger number. So set notation. So you need brackets, and you need to go least to greatest. Least to greatest. So we looked at it. We said, is it a trinomial? We said, no, it's not. So we just found the greatest common factor. Then we set all the pieces equal to 0. And then we just solve. Now, if it's a trinomial, it looks slightly different just because the factoring looks slightly different. So we do the same thing. Here's our second example. 8x squared plus 18x minus 5. So we have a trinomial. So this is a trinomial. So we're going to use a product sum puzzle. So we're going to make sure it equals 0 because that's what it's supposed to equal. First thing we're going to do, we're going to factor this trinomial. To factor a trinomial, we say a times c. So 8 times negative 5 is negative 40. And then I need a pair of factors that multiply to equal negative 40 and add to equal 18. So I'm just going to go through here real quick and list all my factors. And if you want to set up a product sum puzzle and completely solve out a product sum puzzle, you can do that. I'm just going to look at this and go, okay, I know these all multiply to equal 40. I need to get something that adds to equal positive 18. If I make this 2 negative, negative 2 plus 20 equals positive 18. So there's the pair that I need. So 8x squared minus 2x plus 20x minus 5 all equals 0. And now we need to get our two sets of parentheses. So I'm going to do my greatest common factor of the first half. The greatest common factor of this, they both have an x in common, so I'm going to take the x out. They're both even numbers, so I'm going to take the 2 out. That's going to leave me with 4x minus 1. No other factor that they have in common because this one is a 1. So now I'm going to take the second half, 20x minus 5. I'm going to factor that out. The only number that these two things have in common is that prime number of 5. So I'm going to factor that out, and that's going to leave me with 4x minus 1. So these two things match, so that makes the first half of my answer. And then I take these two things and I connect them. This is a 2x and a positive 5. So I put those in a set of parentheses together. And then I'm going to do exactly like I did up here. I'm going to take all of the pieces. So I'm going to take 4x minus 1 and 2x plus 5, and I'm going to make them equal 0. And I'm going to solve those two equations. So I'm going to add 1, so I get 4x equals 1. So on this side, x equals 1/4 because I divided by 4. And here, I'm going to subtract 5, so I get 2x equals negative 5. And then I'm going to divide by 2, so x equals negative 5 halves. So I got two fraction answers, and that's okay. I'm going to leave them as fractions. I'm not going to change them to decimals. I'm going to put them in order from least to greatest. The negative is the least, and the positive is the greatest. And I'm going to put them in set notation. So with factoring, solving by factoring, all you need to do is factor. And you've done factoring before. If you need a refresher on it, go back to those videos on factoring a greatest common factor and factoring a trinomial and watch those videos again. And then remember, to solve them, all you have to do is take whatever pieces that you get and make them individually equal 0 and solve those small equations to find your x-intercepts for your quadratic function.